And we're back and we're on the air on another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy, where we have a casual and informal discussion about Star Trek. And today I'm really honored to have a new guest host on the show, Sean.
Hey.
And you're from Trek on the Tube, an amazing channel, which everyone pause this video now, go check out Trek on the Tube, and then come back. That's like 5 more people that'll come visit you,
Oh,
hopefully.
boom. There you go. Boom.
So how's it going, Sean?
It's going fine. It's going fine. How about you?
It's going really good. I'm excited. I'm a little I've moved from Seattle to Miami, so everything's like totally messed up for me. So I'm so behind on like talking about Star Trek Discovery. We're doing today The Butcher's Knife Cares Not for the Lamb's Cry, which is episode 4. And I really appreciate, I know you've already talked about this episode, but I'm really glad you're going to be talking about it again. I have a lot of I have a lot of questions, and I feel like you're a good source for answers for not just new Star Trek fans, but also I feel like you give really good insights for people who have been watching Star Trek for years. So
nice. I do my best.
The
Star Trek community isn't always easy to cater to be honest.
No, it's not easy, but that's kind of what's cool about it, is that it is a microcosm of real life, because life isn't always easy either. Neither is Star Trek Discovery, by the way.
Nope.
Before we go into the episode, since this is your first time on the show, I was wondering if you'd take a few minutes to just kind of go over how your Star Trek story, like why do you like Star Trek? How did you come to Star Trek? And anything else you want to add to that?
Oh my God. Well, I mean, I was born in the 25th century, and so I came back in time. And no, of course. No, I've been watching Star Trek since, I mean, I don't even remember. I think it was the first thing I was watching. My mom liked Star Trek, so she actually saw the original series as a very young person. Then, of course, when TNG came out, she was loving that. And so as a baby, we would watch Star Trek together. My dad would watch Star Trek. Oh no, my dad would watch like sports and what have you on the big TV in the living room, and my mom would take me into the bedroom and would watch Star Trek there together on this ridiculous small. I think it was even black and white TV, but you know.
Wow.
It's ridiculous because it's the 90s, but they had those, small box kind of portable TVs. Yeah, no. So
I know the kind you're talking about. Yeah, my dad had one as well. That was cool.
Anyway, I watched Star Trek with her for years. So of course, TNG and Voyager.
Those were your favorite?
Well, those were the ones that we watched, and so I mean, I suppose Voyager became my favorite. And it always has been. I know that a lot of fans are going to get angry, but hey, it was a younger show with a younger crew than the Next Generation, and I don't know. As a child, I felt closer to them.
I think it's kind of like the whole who's your first Doctor thing. Like, I think your first Star Trek series means a lot to you, no matter what. Like, I find myself recently, I thought, okay, I'm having a lot of frustrations with Star Trek Discovery. I'm also loving it, which is an odd feeling, but like it's a love frustrate. But I thought, oh, well, you know what? I'm gonna go back and watch the original series. And I have to admit that, like, when I was watching the original series, I was like, I can kind of see why some things are different. Like, even just simple things like a mirror, that, like, just the sets and everything. Like, I know that if they could have done things differently, they might have. But we'll get more, further into that. But like, still, when I watch the original series, there's like this forgiveness that I automatically have just because it's so attached to my childhood, and I can't help but associate and the show with that, and have like these like really wonderful, just positive feelings despite any problems. So I feel like that's something that happens to everyone. Like, if DS9 was your first show, or Voyager was your first show, or TNG was your first show, you're gonna have like a special
it eventually happens with attachment. I think every show over time. I mean, it's interesting looking back at whatever show it is now. I mean, Enterprise is the most recent one I've seen, which I got very frustrated about, but still, I forgive. The funny thing is, when the show's been out for 10 years, 20 years, you kind of look back at it, and all of them have their own style, and in that way, they all have their, they have their own mistakes, and they have their own, good points, pros and cons, and you kind of forgive the cons and what have you. I'm getting very emotional about Discovery because it's the first new show that's coming out as I'm an adult. But I think in 10 years' time, when I look back at it, it'll just be just another chapter in Star Trek, and it'll have its own, visual style. It'll have its own way of telling stories, and I suppose I'll forgive its flaws as well.
I hear you, here. And for me, one of the most exciting things to piggyback off what you said is like what we're doing right now has never before existed for Star Trek fans. It's I
must be annoying people. I keep reading about this. It's actually insane. I can't imagine how it must have been when TNG was coming out. People can do this. They had to talk about it, I don't know, in school or in the office. But then it was kind of, you would be cringy to watch TNG, wouldn't you, back in the day? Like, people would judge you for watching it. Though it had,
kind of huge stigma, you're right.
Everyone was watching it, but you didn't want to admit it, right?
I think that's what was happening, although I was loud and proud.
Anyway, that must have been amazing. I was too young. I was too young for that.
You were just what was it? I forgot what was Scotty's line about my grandmother had wheels and something about diapers?
Diapers.
I forget, but something like that.
Oh my God.
Cool. Well, that's a really cool story, and I'm really excited to continue to meet people in the community. And this is so exciting that you're on the Starfleet Boy, and I'm honored. So we'll jump right into the episode summary, which is, and then after that we'll go right into our discussion. And it can be all over the place. And audience, this is a spoiler rich. There's no holds barred. So if you haven't seen the episode, "The Butcher's Knife Cares Not for the Lamb's Cry," or subsequent episodes, because I'm sure we'll mix it up and talk about the things that happen a little later, please go watch Star Trek Discovery and then come back. And if you can't watch it, I'm really sorry.
Let me just mention that on my channel, if you were to check out my channel and watch the Discovery reviews or anything else, it's just heavy spoiler. I don't warn you. I don't warn anyone ever. It's just everything I explain is canon and lore, and it's been established in Star Trek for over 10 years. I'm just assuming everyone knows it, or you don't know it, but you want to learn about it. So
I love that. So yeah,
I have no spoiler warnings. I just go straight in.
All right, here we go. So the dilithium mining operation on Corovan II is under attack, right? And so the Discovery is basically ordered to go and save it, because like so many times on Star Trek, it's the only ship within range, and it's especially the only ship within range because it has the Spore, what is it called, the displacement activated Spore hub drive, or dash drive, which I wish they would call it more often.
I think they just call it the Spore drive, or the S drive eventually.
The S drive, which is pretty interesting. Yeah. Anyways, so Captain Lorca is basically lies to the Admiral and says that they're ready to do this. And so now he has to figure out a way to motivate his crew. So he takes some extreme measures and does a few things that maybe are questionable or, possibly just unscrupulous. And it does work. It motivates his crew, but it also causes some of them to make some rash decisions, which lead to their deaths, basically. Meanwhile, in Federation space, the T'Kuvma's crippled craft has been adrift for 6 months, and Klingons have not bothered to rescue it, and neither has the Federation bothered to capture it, which is very interesting, which I can't wait to, to dive into. But anyways, Voq, who is now left in charge, is debating whether or not, continuing to debate. Apparently he's been debating this for some time with L'rell.
6 months.
For 6 months, whether or not they should go on board the Shanzhou and retrieve a dilithium processor. And so he finally decides to do it, but not before Cole finally visits 6 months later, and decides to lure his crew with food because they've been starving, into joining forces with him. The Discovery finally gets its act together because they figure out that Ripper, the tardigrade, gigantic tardigrade, is the secret supercomputer that they've been looking for to navigate the Discovery beyond just a few, short hops. And then they reach the dilithium mine just in time, as always, of course, just
Of course.
at the nick of time to save the day. And yet there is an additional cost, which is we find out that the tardigrade is hurt by the spore drive somehow. Back on the ship graveyard, Cole decides after they retrieve after Voq and L'rell retrieve the processor, Cole lets them know, hey, basically I'm gonna kill you, but L'rell intervenes and says, I have a better fate for him, which apparently she has her own devices for him. And so so they instead abandon him on the Shanzu. And as he watches hopelessly Takuma's ship and Cole's ship warp off, he's then surprised suddenly by L'rell, who offers him basically like a devil's choice here.
And let me turn you into Lieutenant Ash Tyler, right?
Which is what everyone thinks, exactly. And so he seems like someone who has nothing left to lose, and he takes this mysterious offer, which we've still yet to resolve to this day, but we have a lot of good theories.
Yeah.
And that's it. I think that's about the quickest summary, but yeah, it summarizes the episode.
It's to be honest, a very messy episode. It's all over the place.
And so is my summary.
And the funny thing is, it accomplishes not much, but yeah, no, I think your summary managed to condense it quite well, actually.
On a show that's only 15 episodes and is supposed to be like extremely heavy with it's an arc show. It's not a episodic or situational show. Why waste any time on things that don't go anywhere? So I can only hope that the producers and the writers are like, that thing you were so perturbed about the 6 months and all that stuff, here's the answer, like 10 episodes later, whatever the thing is. But I feel like it'd be really bad if they don't answer some of these questions.
I'm gonna be honest. Okay, so this is a bit, awkward because we've seen. I suppose you've seen up until episode 6.
I'm current. Yeah.
Okay, so we've both seen up until episode 6. I feel like episode 5 and 6 we're actually getting somewhere. We have a story, and episode 1 and 2 is kind of its self-contained kind of J.J. Abrams movie, and episodes 3 and 4 were kind of clunky. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we got the story. There's a kind of drive moving. I don't know. Yeah, these kind of do feel. I don't know. They establish a lot of things, but go in different directions. I don't know. It's weird to explain. I have trouble putting it into words.
Burnham is the central character, obviously, because we follow her. She's the only character we follow, and like that's one of the things that Brian Fuller was saying, is that it's going to be a whole different kind of focus. So like tomorrow, like in another episode, the Discovery although the show's called Star Trek Discovery, so I doubt it's going to get destroyed. Yeah. But theoretically, the Discovery could get destroyed, and if Burnham survives, we'll just follow her to her next mission. So the story is about Michael Burnham. So far what we've seen about her, and this is, kind of including like you said in the most recent episode with Sarek, really good. I liked it a lot. We do see that all we know about her is that she's a human that somehow ended up in the care of Sarek, went to the Vulcan Science Academy, had the chance of going into the Vulcan research group, but was, through a choice of Sarek's, a selfish choice of Sarek's, directed instead into Starfleet, and now she's trying to make the best of it. She doesn't want to be a human, but she doesn't.
I don't think it was a selfish act, actually.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
selfless in the sense
well,
that
I mean, we're talking about episode 6 now, aren't we? But
yeah.
we can keep that for another discussion. Okay.
We'll get it deeper into that. I'm glad to know how you feel about it. But yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it was a little selfless, but regardless, it was a decision that shaped Burnham's life, and now she's here. She's in the Federation. She's making the best of it. She's trying to be true to her Vulcan upbringing and training, but she's also trying to be a human in the meantime, because her time 7 years with Captain Georgiou has taught her how to embrace that, although it doesn't really feel that way. You'd think after 7 years you'd be a lot more human in your responses, but she's not. That's fair enough. Fine, she's held on to this.
It's very metaphorical for a lot of immigrants nowadays. Having lived in France for a while, I've noticed that there's a lot of how should I say this? There's a lot of kids that are born into Arab families. They're actually born in France, but they live like they kind of have this enhanced Arab lifestyle in the sense that they're trying to respect the culture that their parents have. So in that sense, in France, they kind of get rejected because they're not so much welcome because of the difference in culture. But when they go back to their countries, their respective countries, Morocco, Algeria, they kind of considered outsiders too. They don't feel quite at home. They feel like, well, they're treated as French people. And,
that's a really good. Okay, so
Burnham
that just kind of changed how I feel about Burnham. That's really cool. I
feel like she's in that
dimension. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
That's deep, because I came over to the United States before I turned 3, and my sister was practically born here. She was an infant when we moved to the United States. And growing up, my parents made a conscious decision to, for example, we spoke English at home, and they just decided to give our kids the best possible opportunity for success. We're going to fully embrace this culture, the American culture. And it's strange because I definitely, of course I feel, very American. But I also know that my heritage is Pakistani. And whenever I encounter someone who grew up in Pakistan, or my family who's even more immersed in the culture, I do feel like an outsider, and I do feel really awkward and strange. But at the same time, there's something deep inside you that's like, oh wait, but this is who, this is, wow, okay, very cool.
Worf is strange in that sense, because he's the most Klingon of Klingons. No one in the Empire is as
Klingon as Worf is.
As Worf, but Worf, I don't know, he idealizes his culture because he's not living in it. I mean, to every other Klingon, it's just honor, yeah, whatever. But he's looking on the outside like, we have to be like this. Anyway, he's living on the outside too. So
that's rad. That's a really great perspective. It kind of, I have to digest this now, but you've kind of opened a dimension that I didn't have. I hadn't thought about before. I'd love to know what anyone else who's listening to this thinks about it. Wow. Well, going back to the episode, let's talk about some of the details, and since the devils are in the details. Discovery, in this episode, I realized that upon rewatching that the design and the choices that are being made visually are spanning throughout the entire Star Trek visual canon, if you will. Like the red alert is from the movie era, specifically Star Trek 2, 3, 4, and up till 6. The design of the ship resembles something that would be somewhere between the movie era and the Next Generation. There's aspects of it that I feel like
I feel Enterprise too.
And Enterprise, well, yeah, and the Shenzhou. But then even there, the Discovery has that cool warp core that harkens back to the original series, where it's it just goes deep inside. And even Enterprise, their warp core was flat. and extended out as well. But on the Shanzhou, when they're retrieving the processor out of the warp core looks more like the movie era warp core. On the Shanzhou, which is
an older ship, because the transport is a
yeah, and right, and it's supposed to be closer to the NX era. The Shanzhou's somewhere in between. Like, she's already an old ship 7 years ago when Burnham comes aboard, and so I just find it strange, and I find it odd that
it's easily fixable. They could have simply filmed that scene on the Discovery, on the set of the Discovery. You know, throw a bit of dust around and say it's broken and cold, and
or just made it like a completely dark room. But here we have this beautifully lit warp core that's like, you know, vertical,
very TNG,
very TNG. And it actually reminded me of the motion picture warp core had those blades that came out of that core. You know, it's like a kind of a film, you know, motion picture era kind of thing. But anyways, so that confuses me. And again, something keeps sticking in my head, which is like the producers claim that all the anachronisms and all the continuity errors and everything like that is somehow intentional, but it's so hard to believe that it's intentional. What do you think?
Okay, unless they do something completely out of the box, which I think everyone at this point is expecting and yet not expecting. I think everyone's thought about it, like this is happening in some sort of other timeline or parallel universe, and the Spore drive is going to take them into the Prime. Unless that's happening, which I mean, everyone's probably thought about that, but I don't think it's a very acknowledged theory. Or I don't think they're going to go in that direction. No, I don't think they're going to explain the visual choices that they've made.
They've also said as we approach the TOS era, things will start to look and feel more like TOS. So
that I can understand. So we have to get rid of this arc about the war, which is supposedly going to blast season 1, and then we're going to have post-war on season 2 and the beginning of maybe something else. I think, yes, they have intentions to maybe move into more traditional colors. I don't know if they're going to go straight into original series colors or if they're going to go through the cage colors. I think they are going to try and do those kind of things. Maybe they went too far in wanting to have their own identity in the first season. I know that Brian Fuller said he didn't want any cameos in the first season because he wanted the show to, you know, stand on its own 2 feet, some 2 legs. So maybe they
it's just
on nacelles, very long nacelles.
They're very long nacelles.
I think maybe that's what they were trying to do. Maybe they went too far in that direction. Like maybe just made everything so different straight away. I think they simply have a different way of interpreting and explaining canon to themselves than what we do. Because I mean, if you were to tell me, hey, we're going to make everything fit canon, then you would have original series nacelles. And that would be the first thing that I would do. And you'd have the originals or the cage colors on the uniforms. That would be the first thing that would come to mind.
Based on these kind of clues that the producers are giving, my mind I keep like trying to use logic as best as I can. Like, you know, if you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable must be the truth. What if, yes, okay, so the Discovery will end up in the Prime timeline, but right now we're not. It would make complete sense if we're in some kind of alternate reality that's just an amalgamation or like a skew in just like odd little ways. Like, so for example, it's safe to you know, we can say like eventually, I'll use this as an example. When Scotty and McCoy give the recipe for transparent aluminum to the guy in the glass factory, right?
Yeah, what's his face in Patrick Fuller.
At some point, transparent aluminum must have been invented, and we know from our normal timeline that it was never invented in the 80s, right? Like, or even the 90s, you know. But now, because of this little change, it now is invented sooner. And actually, what's happening is by changing the timeline, you're completely destroying whatever would have happened, and it's like a whole, you know, we can get into the mechanics of it, but ultimately little tiny changes like this can change the outcome. So wherever Discovery is starting out, it's a place where some things have advanced somehow and other things are like still far behind. So for example, the Spore drive, which we never hear about or anything like that, it exists in this dimension. And I think it might be the key to what brings them to the dimension that we know, and so on and so forth. So that's my like kind of running little theory that over the seasons, the only reason the show will become more aligned with the aesthetic that we know and love of TOS is because slowly the Spore drive, what they're not realizing is they're not just traveling through space, they're also traveling through dimensions, and each jump takes them a little bit further away. And maybe the weirdness that we're seeing is because Discovery is displacing all, it's like going through all these different dimensions and grabbing little upgrades, if you will, unintentional, because along the way. I don't know. Just throwing that
I
out
think you're
there.
going too far. I get, okay. As we do, we get a lot of theories on our channels, and a lot of them are amazing. They all go way too far. In the sense that the writers didn't go that far. They're doing it in the prime timeline, and I think that's it. I mean, the closest thing I could think of, because I'm trying to think, yes, it was confirmed that there will be multiple Mirror Universe episodes. I'm good. The closest thing I could think is they're going to eventually transition into the Mirror Universe, and then when they try to get back, they don't get back to wherever they are. They get back to the prime timeline.
Right.
And they're like, why is there no war? Why is this a Cold War?
Right.
Why is there no active fighting? And they're like, okay, so they try and check out what's going on with the ships, and they have a look, and there's like, what is that? That's a Constitution class. Oh my God, look at it. I mean, that would be brilliant. I think a lot of Trek fans would be happy with that. Kind of like find themselves like, oh, we have to wear that uniform instead of our blue.
I like it. Yeah, that might be a good one.
It could be interesting, but I really don't think they're going to go in that direction. I'm going to be honest with you. I think that they looked around at all the Star Trek that existed visually and kind of picked out what they liked. Tried to adapt it as best they could to it's in, especially when it comes to comic, the tricorders, and kind of have the Trek fans satisfied. But then other than that, it's kind of like, this is 2017, transparent screens and holograms.
I totally vibe with that, and I would prefer that as a writer too. But I guess two things I would not have done is, one, I wouldn't have set the show in the time period it's set in, and if I had set the show in that time period, I would just announce, "Hey guys," because Battlestar Galactica did it, and it was brilliant. This is a reimagining. It's a reimagining of Star Trek. Fans are gonna love it, but it's not your grandpa's. It's not your daddy's Star Trek. Come on, this
that would be okay.
Yeah,
I'm on this crusade on Twitter. Understand whose decision it was to make the show a prequel, because if it's the writers or Brian Fuller's, then I can blame them. Why would you do that? But if it's some executive, at the top of CBS saying you need to make this around because people only know Kirk, that would be a very executive kind of producer kind of way to see things, and they just give an order and they don't care because they don't. All they want is for people to watch it, CBS All Access to take off, and money to come in. Okay, I understand.
Oh, you just cut out. We missed your last sentence. Say it. I understand.
I understand why the writers would do that.
Right.
Because they would have to. So they're doing their best.
I know who would give up. I put myself in this place where I've thought about that too. It's like I would not protest.
I would still write it.
Yeah, I would still write it. I would not protest so hard that I'd be like, I would do my best.
I think that's what happened to Brian Fuller eventually, because I think it was kind of a mutual decision where, from what I gather, he had so many ideas going in one direction, and the other guys said, no, you have to do it this way, and eventually it's just like, okay, it's not going to work.
Well, the JFK documents are declassified tomorrow, so maybe in a year we'll get a declassified document from CBS that lets us know what the case is. That definitely sounds right. Okay, well, so I agree with you on that, and I think you have a really good, solid perspective on that, and I'm going to go with your perspective for now, even though it's very vexing and frustrating. But okay, so do you see any way that the Klingons could be in Federation space for 6 months? Like, what's the deal with that? Let's just talk about that whole subplot. How have you reconciled it, or have you decided not to reconcile it, or you're hoping, like me, that there will be an explanation in a later episode?
I don't know. I mean,
we had a fun discussion on Twitter about the telescope.
Oh god, the telescope. Okay, essentially every Star Trek show has its flaws.
Every show, period.
Some big, some small. I think this one was just they wanted to do a time lapse when it came to Burnham. They wanted to show us 6 months later when it came to Burnham, and I think they didn't really just think about it too much when it came to the Klingons. Like, yeah, let's just put the Klingons like on pause for 6 months, and then we'll pick up later. I don't think they'll ever explain any of that. It is stupid that Voq would be sitting there for 6 months. I mean, he doesn't have a shuttle on his ship, so he can't leave anywhere, which is kind of stupid. He doesn't even go and check out the Shinjo. Not even to steal. I understand that he doesn't want to cannibalize the ship, but he could at least look up for some, look up technology and try to understand how the ship works. But nothing, like literally nothing happens. He eats Georgia.
Oh yeah, that was that was. And I guess
actually, I don't mind that. You know what? I'll tell you what. I know a lot of people were shocked by that, but I find it. Starving Klingons would eat a dead human on the ship.
They might not have been starving at the point that they ate her. I think it was ceremonial.
Yeah, because then she would be pretty. Yeah,
right.
They've got no food on this ship.
Right.
But I find that more believable than when what's his name, Cole, comes and he delivers all this food on the table. Have a reputation of transporting live beasts because they like to eat them fresh or alive.
Right.
And so this guy comes up like L'rell literally, she has a chicken wing at some point.
That looked like a chicken drumstick. You're right.
And you're like, yeah, it was a drumstick. It's like, oh, what? Like, okay, that's pretty dead, and it's been dead and roasted, right?
It's like a cook.
No, I think
it looked like a feast that it looked like more like in that scene in Star Trek VI, whatever was on the table. It resembled that a lot.
Yes. Yeah. No, honestly, I think that there will be no explanation for what happened during those 6 months. I think simply the war went on. I would think that everyone assumed left. He had repaired a ship and left, and he was doing something else. It's just that he was doing his own thing, and space is big, so no one really met up. And it's eventually Cole said, why not go back there and see what's going on? And he's like, oh, this guy's still here. That's how I'm kind of explaining it.
Yeah, it's a.
That's all I got. I got nothing for the telescope though. I just think that telescope. It shouldn't be where it is, but
I'm sticking to my guns about the salvage crew. But then the point. Then again, it's like, okay, your whole fleet was not at the Battle of the Binary Stars. Like, I understand that something like 8,000 people were lost in the first hours of the war, but it looked like there was a maximum of like 10 ships at the Battle of the Binary Star, maybe 20 at
maybe 12.
Most.
Maybe there was a dozen ships there.
There was a dozen ships there, yeah. And same.
That's what I had.
On the Klingon side, there were 24, so maybe let's match that. Let's just say there was.
Sure about that. What are they 24?
They said there was one ship for each house of the. Remember, she was like, "There's 24."
But then he doesn't even talk to the 24, does he? There's only like 7 that pop up.
7. It's true. You're right. Like the lesser houses don't even get an audience.
But the smaller. Okay. So the smaller houses, they don't really count. I'm hoping one of those houses has hair.
Yeah,
But that's just fingers crossed. But
yeah, and like, or the, you know, the House of Worf, you know, Moog or whatever appears. It would be really awesome. We are the actual Klingons. But then so you have this like pretty big battle, but like
I'm hoping that's what happens, to be honest. But
we know from other, we don't really see a lot of fleet stuff happening in the original series, and so we don't have a precedence for it, and we don't see a lot of fleet stuff happening in the movies, so we don't have a precedent for it. But at the Battle of Wolf 359, there were like at least, I don't know, something like 50 ships, right? Like it was a huge affair. Actually, we can look this up. How many
I think the point, okay, so the point they tried to make in the original series, they made this point simply because they had no budget to show any other ships, was that the Enterprise was really on the edge of the discovered space, and so that kind of made them alone in this huge vastness. And I think what we have to take away from this era, be it the Cage, be it the original series, the animated series, or Discovery, is yes, the Federation has explored quite a lot, but they still have a very small fleet, at least compared to what they've explored and what they're colonizing. I think the Federation is simply in over their heads. They're close to borders that they maybe shouldn't be. The Klingons, they don't know much about the Klingons yet. They don't know much about the Romulans. They don't know much about. They don't even know about the Cardassians at this point, I think. But they are very widespread, and I think that's kind of the reason why the battle at the Binary Stars is a big thing, is because, yeah, there were a dozen ships that managed to get there on time, or maybe more.
We know
after that they kind of left to themselves.
It's true. If we're assuming that NX-01, designation 01 means the first ship, and by 1701, let's say, there's at least 1,701 starships in the fleet. So if Discovery, I'm just saying, like, it could be like a thing, because Discovery's designation is smaller. It's 1031, although supposedly the Enterprise is flying around at the time of the Discovery.
I think those are just. I mean, if we were
they don't mean anything.
Were to explain them, I would just go. The fleet yard that makes them designates them based on whatever model that they're creating at that time.
That makes sense. Like a 17, the 17 class is like that. Like Constitution classes all get a 17 designation or something like that. That makes sense.
Exactly. So
there's an interesting thread,
something like that.
There's an interesting thread on Reddit that I'm just kind of lightly perusing, and some of the numbers thrown out is there could, based on some math that people are doing, there could be anywhere between 10,000 Starfleet vessels in total. In TOS time, for example, Kirk claims that there's a dozen ships like the Enterprise in the fleet, and says this proudly, which would speak to the ship's rarity. For 12 to be a rare number, there needs to be a great number of other vessels. In the Best of Both Worlds loses 39 vessels. So we know now that 39 vessels were at the Battle of Wolf 359. Though with a week of time to prepare, only a limited number of combat-ready ships were able to participate. This suggests that at Warp 9.6, only ships within 36 light years could have arrived in time. Picard states in First Contact that the Federation spans 8,000 light years. So even though there is a gross inconsistency in how fast Warp actually is, we can imagine it would take a large number of vessels simply to patrol the amount of space. Shelby states they'll have the fleet back up in less than a year, thus stating outright that Starfleet can turn out 40 new vessels a year. Starships are considered to have a 30-year lifespan. Assuming that rate, we would arrive at around 1,200 full starships after 30 years. So some people think there's about 2,000 starships, and others think there's about 10,000 starships. So it's somewhere between 2,000 and 10,000 starships.
Well, that's a big margin.
I know, that is a huge margin.
Simply put, I think in TNG time, TNG, DS9, Voyager, there are a lot of ships, at least enough to patrol, fend off maybe the Borg. Not enough to fight maybe the Dominion, which, they're huge. It's patrolling.
we may have
Federation space.
We may have gotten an answer from that thread, though. We are. It is established that this is like at the edge of Federation space, so maybe the ship was left there for 6 months because Starfleet assumed that it was just
wreckage
and too dangerous to go there. Too dangerous, and also the war's in full effect, so not enough resources to send a proper
that seems logical. They don't have time to go back there. They don't have ships to go back there. You would also assume that considering the Klingons won and everyone in Starfleet left in an escape pod, you would assume that the Klingons just took everything they could.
They hold that space too, in a sense.
Yeah.
So okay. Yeah. All right. I feel better now.
So we can explain kind of that fact. It still doesn't explain why the telescope isn't there, but in the way.
Sorry, ticket man. Although now that's thrown out the window because
he didn't know.
He's totally surprised. Yeah. So, maybe Disco DJ TJ robot augmented human took it.
I'll tell you what. Okay, here's the thing. Here's what I'm gonna go with. It's ridiculous, but I'm gonna go with this. Captain George knew that this is the only thing that she needed to protect on the ship. She activated some sort of transporter, beacon on one of the shuttle pods. So if one of the escape pods,
I like that. It's automatic. If
one of the escape pods activates, boom, the telescope beams on. So you got some poor bloke trying to get in this escape pod. His telescope pops up in front of him, right?
Oh, with a little data file that tells you what to do with it. That's cool. I like it.
Please take this to Starfleet headquarters. Okay.
I dig it. I'm going with that one too. You are a good Star Trek explainer.
I try to rationalize things.
I love the explanations. Captain Lorca, and you can consider everything you've seen so far. What do you think of him? Like him, hate him, suspicious, still holding out your opinion?
Well, I don't like him.
And why?
I like to not like him.
You like to not like him.
I like characters that are unlikable, because it's interesting to have that kind of dynamic. I think he's not really a good Starfleet captain. Episodes that's kind of been told to him, and I was happy to see that they're actually going to take his ship away from him, or try.
Well, now we don't know.
I don't know. At this point, at the point of episode 4, he's kind of, we need to win the war, and I don't know that even in the time of war, that doesn't really feel like what a Starfleet best intentions of the Federation, even in time of war.
There's some weird dialogue in this episode that tells you a little, I think, about Captain Lorca. Not very much, but he says that he studies war, which is very strange because there hasn't been a war up until now, and yet he's been studying war. Yet he's in Starfleet, which even there's a defense there's a defense component to Starfleet, but there's not really like a warrior class of or war mechanism and stuff like that. So I think it's odd that he ended up in Starfleet with this like obsession and stuff like that.
I mean, okay, imagine the guy's already obsessed with war, okay, from a young age or what have you. He could still manage to get into Starfleet. Simply, when they ask him tests, like, if they ask him, like, what would you do in this situation? Would you blow the ship up, or would you try to save them or negotiate? I mean, he could just lie.
And we know
say,
that he does.
I would negotiate.
Right, and we know that he does that on his...
know that he does. So he passed his test. He's passed his, Starfleet training with flying colors or not, I don't know.
And he's not the first unstable, weird...
Yeah, no,
captain
absolutely.
Either there's lots of examples.
It's hard to. Well, I mean, especially in TNG, every captain and every admiral that comes by, they're all crazy. But it's not that hard to, I guess.
It does.
Yeah, so I mean, he's
and
I think his behavior, the way he thinks, comes before the time he integrated Starfleet. And he hid that behavior from Starfleet in order to finally get command and gain power. I think that's he likes that. He likes power. He likes surviving, apparently.
It's true. I really want to like him.
Well, that's because not so much Lorca himself. It's because we all like Jason Isaacs, but
assuming he doesn't make it past season 1 because he's very unstable, that means we'll get a Captain Saru possibly as a successor, or even maybe a new captain. So that'll be an interesting thing to see what happens to Lorca.
I think they might give us a new captain. I don't think Saru's quite ready to be captain.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I've been watching TOS, and the episode, darn it, what episode was it? I think it's the episode with where Spock has and he has to go back. What is it called? You know, where he has to fight to the death for a mate.
Oh my god. Yeah, of course. I know exactly what episode, but I forget.
Season 2, episode 1, I think, or episode 2. But anyways, in that episode, I thought it was interesting because Kirk states, "You're the best first officer in Starfleet," and he's like, "And I don't take that lightly, or I don't want to just let you, go or whatever." And it's neat because Burnham was the best star at this point. Burnham was the best first officer in Starfleet, as Saru states. So I like that these little kind of like parallels between Michael Burnham and Spock, and I also like that Spock's established as being younger than her and like newer into, or at least that's the impression I'm getting so far, is that he's younger.
I would assume every captain always says that their first officer is the best in Starfleet.
Well, but the statement is it's possible that every captain would say it, but I think the statement's like, you're known as the best first officer in Starfleet. Until he even says something like that to Burnham. She's like, when they first meet, she's like, I know you were the best first officer in Starfleet, or something like that, before the mutiny. So it's interesting, the two different paths that they take, but they're both rebels, so I like that too. Saru, Amok time, that's it. Thank you. This is a casual and informal discussion, and if you've been watching Starfleet Boy, you know that I have terrible memory, so I never get things right. But I do have the internet. So
I have a channel that explains canon and lore, but I have terrible memory. So I'm constantly looking stuff up.
Hey, we can't possibly. Star Trek is so rich that I can't imagine anyone. There's probably someone out there with that kind of minutia or savantism, but
I'm starting to actually be able to remember in what episodes certain things have happened. So when I'm thinking about a certain scene, I'm like, okay, so this is this series, this episode, and I know where to look in Netflix, which is
really cool.
Great. I'm starting to get there. I would love to just be able to say,
Hamlet, Act 1, Scene 2.
Yeah, exactly. 17th minute, of TNG season 3, episode 5.
Saru goes back and forth. He at once he'll compliment the heck out of Burnham, and then he's like, "You're a freaking danger, and I hate you." And I'm not sure how I feel about the believability of their relationship. What do you think of it?
They're trying to play this as essentially brother sister kind of relationship, and I think that's kind of how it is with brothers and sisters.
I have a sister, and I don't know.
Yeah, it's not like that.
It's not like that. I guess it was like that when we were like children, but like as adults, we're very like different. And I feel like 7 years of serving with someone and you're still acting out in this way, it just kind of.
They're competing in a sense to both become captains.
Yeah, I hear. Yeah, I do hear that.
You're not competing to be, whatever, with your sister, are you?
No, that's
true. Like boss of the household or whatever.
No, nothing like that. You're right.
So I don't know, but I see what you mean. I think it's more. It's kind of a back and forth more between the Starfleet of behavior that's kind of recent years and his instinctive scaredy cat kind of nature.
Yeah, I think you're right about that too.
Oh God, she's absolutely nuts. And then sometimes it's kind of like, you're amazing. You get things done, amazing. But I assume she's been amazing for 7 years.
That's
what you mean, though.
I know that this is Brian Fuller, the Fuller effect, and then later he departs from the project, so all bets are off. But in the original kind of teaser for Star Trek Discovery, it said, you know, strange new worlds, new villains, new ships, something like that. You know, all these things. So far in the in 4 episodes, we've gotten the tardigrade, which is a cool new kind of species. Okay, so new life form, right? But we don't really get to know much about it till later, and it still remains like a bit of a mystery. But so far, we haven't really seen much new. And I know we're in a war and everything like that, so exploration's on hold.
Well, those are statements that are best reserved for a television series that takes place after the events of Nemesis and the destruction of Romulus.
Thank you.
New worlds. 2387. That's when they blow up Romulus in the prime timeline, and exploration should be not even directly after that, because there would be huge repercussions after that, especially considering the Romulan Empire were about to join the Federation, or were moving towards that in Nemesis.
Well, and unifying with Vulcans too, so yeah.
Vulcan, I mean, everything was happening at once, and then all of a sudden Romulus blows up. I can only assume there's plenty of Romulans that would go even as far as to blame Spock for doing it on purpose. Because, I mean, come on, you star going supernova?
Hypernova.
Hypernova, oh, my bad.
Which it's like
that's the J.J. Abrams coming out there. It's hyper. It's bigger than it.
Bigger than a supernova. It's a colossal nova.
Yeah, no, those statements about discovery and exploration kind of apply to moving forward. You can't really explore and discover when you've already explored and discovered in that time. Especially, I mean, Constitution class ships, so the Enterprise and Company, those are the exploring vessels. Those are the ones that are out at the edge of the galaxy, discovering, exploring, doing terrible first contacts. Discovery is just kind of a science ship.
Yeah, it's supposed to be doing what the Grissom was doing, like, you know, cataloging gaseous anomalies and like
until the war comes along.
Until the war comes along, and then now they're the as Lorca says, the tip of the spear is a science vessel.
Amazing quote.
I know there's a lot of good writing in the show. I do have to say, kudos to the writers. There's something fishy going on, and I don't understand it, and I'm really frustrated. But at the same time, there's a lot of moments that
the show is very intriguing. It has been since the premiere. With all the complaints that I have about it, simply because I'm kind of like a raging Trek fan. What's going on? And there's a lot of friends of mine that have never seen Star Trek before and that are watching it now. Today you should watch Star Discovery. And I insisted only a little. And now they're watching it on their own and they're sending me messages like, oh my God, have you seen this episode? And of course I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've got it channeled. But they're like, you know, it's amazing. I don't know what's going on. You know, we're theory crafting all day at work with a friend of mine.
How are you guys watching?
They must be doing something.
How are you guys watching the show in Canada? Do you have to subscribe as well, or is it on regular TV or Netflix, or what's the deal?
So we have Space Channel, which is free and not free.
Okay. Nothing's free.
TV,
our
TV provider Bell. We have like a $40 contract, which provides us with, you know, internet, phone, and TV. But of course, if we wanted to add an additional channel, Space in particular, we had to pay, I think it was like $3 more per month or something. So that took my plan up from 40 to 43. So I am paying $3 a month just to see it.
Oh,
and
okay.
we're getting about, I think it's 4 or 5 sets of ads throughout an episode. So that's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. How long are the breaks usually, the ad breaks? Enough time to go make popcorn?
No, enough time to maybe, you know, set the table take it back off again or whatever. I don't know. It's not that long. It's just that there's many. Every time the episode kind of fades to black.
Yeah, basically
that's when you'd get an ad.
I'm paying the $10 a month for the non-commercial version, and I have to admit, one thing that I really love about shows like Game of Thrones is that it feels cinematic in the sense that there is no commercial break, no fade to black, unless it's like narratively important, you know, like to fade or whatever. And I wish that, you know, now that CBS, so by the way, at the time of the recording of this episode of Starfleet Boy, it's been released that Discovery is a wild success. Apparently, it's ranking number one. It's huge. I can only imagine CBS's subscription gamble paid off, and
they doubled apparently.
Yeah, so
but this was a few weeks ago. I saw that.
Yeah, I think so. So they're reaping the rewards of their bet paid off, I think. So what I would love to see, and I don't know if anyone from CBS is listening to this or cares, or if if this is important, but I would love to see for the people paying $10 a month, if that they could have a cut, an actual. It wouldn't take much extra, I think, for an editor to cut out the fades. You know what I mean? Like, so just the cut that doesn't have commercial fades would be wonderful, or maybe save that for the DVD or the downloads. I would love to see a option that's higher than 1080p. The show supposedly has like an exquisite budget, and like we're talking about state-of-the-art beautiful effects, yet we can't appreciate them. Anytime there's a special effect on screen, it kind of pixelates, and it's the streaming isn't always perfect, and it would just be really nice to get a 4K.
It's one of the only shows that when I download in 1080p and try to watch in 1080p on my computer, I'm like, is this really 1080p?
I don't think it is. It's like
I have no problem. Like when I download an episode of The Walking Dead or Game of Thrones, I know a lot of people don't like those shows anymore, but when I watch them, I'm like, okay, this is I suppose full HD is what you could call it. It's 1080p. You got visual effects with the zombies, the visual effects with the dragons. You're like, okay, this is amazing.
Yeah, totally.
That is.
So
such a discovery, I kind of feel, especially the tardigrade walking in the plants. It was kind of like, oh my god, that's hideous.
It was pretty, but I don't know if it was terrible or if it's something happening, because there's a lot of stuff for the processor. I happen to know that if you're streaming content, the more information, the less information you actually receive from the stream, the computer fills in the empty spaces with garbage or noise, right? And that's what I'm seeing a lot of in these complicated visual sequences. You see a lot of noise, and I'm fairly confident that that's not there, because it's different every time. I've been watching I've been trying to look at the effects, and sometimes the stream.
So maybe when we get the first season Blu-ray release, and
it'll be spectacular.
We watch it on our HD TVs, it'll be absolutely amazing.
Amazing, yeah. And if it's not, shame on you, CBS. Again.
Shame. Shame.
Super shame, because it's okay. Star Trek The Next Generation, when it came out, for its day, was the pinnacle of special effects on TV. I mean, it was mind-blowing how good nothing else on TV was like that. Same for DS9. We started having
original series as well, wasn't it? They got an Emmy at some point.
Yeah, the original series too. So I would say that that's one thing that's kind of disappointing, is that I was hoping that Discovery would just blow us away with the visuals, and so far I have to say that I'm mostly underwhelmed by the visuals. I mean, I'm hoping, again, it's streaming issues and the fact that I'm not getting a full resolution image and things like that. But in another regard, we haven't really even gotten a nice slow pass of the Discovery. We got a few cool.
I think that's
cool
one of
shots and
those flaws, if we can call it that. You're just gonna have to accept every has its way of showing space and the ships and what have you. And where Deep Space Nine lingered eternally on Deep Space Nine for no reason. Beautiful. I love Deep Space Nine. I love the station. They sitting around it forever. I think Discovery, they're not going to do that. They're just going to do
these
quick passes all the time. Yeah, they do these quick zoom-ins into the bridge, which I feel, I don't know, they could be better. They could be slower. I like the way that they zoom onto the bridge from space, putting aside it's a window. But they could do it slower. Give us time to really take in the ships. TNG always had their two ships kind of floating face to face.
That's the other thing I have a complaint about. It's a show that wasn't made for broadcast television, yet it only is whatever 48 minutes long, which is exactly the length that you would have on broadcast television. Go the whole hour, like, give us those extra like 8 minutes or whatever, actually more than 8 minutes, like 10 or 11 minutes. And
Is this because of space? Because that's the only Canada and space is the only country
that's
that
on
is
broadcast.
Yeah. And is it because of that? Because Brian Fuller originally did say that they could have episodes that would be shorter, if need be, and they would have episodes that might be longer, if need be. So I was thinking, originally, what I said in one of my videos was 40 minutes to an hour, maybe, and it would just depend. Marco Polo, which is a television series that I do not recommend.
At one time it was Netflix's most expensive production, but now it's
it still is technically, because it cost them 100 million per season, so 10 million per episode, which is insane.
They beat it with The Crown. The Crown is now the most expensive show now. Netflix.
Oh, okay. Good on Netflix, because it's sad to have your most expensive show be a failure. They actually canceled it. They've only canceled like 5 shows in their entire existence.
Oh wow!
And
I wonder if the OA is canceled. I like the OA. Anyways, that's.
I haven't seen it.
It's pretty interesting. Check it out. Jason Isaacs is in it.
Yeah, I know. Well, he talked about it when we saw him at Comic-Con.
Oh wow.
Yeah, the Marco Polo had episodes that were very short, even less sometimes, and then they have sometimes that episodes that went like an hour 6, an hour 10. And I was expecting that with Discovery, kind of depending on what kind of story they wanted to tell, how much time they wanted to spend on each individual story. But no, we are getting that
48-minute nice broadcast TV time. So yeah, CBS, please take our money and do something really great. Just like make the show better. Like go all in. Like come on.
I'm very surprised that they've actually managed to rack up so many subscribers on CBS All Access.
Well, I have this I've had this like real kind of struggle, because I'm very like much about like vote with your dollars and only spend money on things that you feel are quality and things like that. Worthy of my attention. My one weakness is Star Trek. If they had said it was $20 a month, I'd be paying. Sorry. But it's like that's my one weakness, and
this
it's
isn't
like
a CBS specific thing though. I have complaints about AMC doing their own, HBO doing their own. Not everyone wants to be on Netflix, but it would be nice to eventually have one streaming platform where you can watch everything you want on it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Or another way, and I know that this is like the part I love the Netflix model. It's like perfect, first of all. And Netflix internationally is touting Discovery as one of its originals. So Netflix has some kind of like
I'm intrigued by that. I think they've put in a lot of money.
You cut out on that last remark.
I think they've put in a lot of money into the show, actually.
Yeah, and I'm glad it's paying off for them, because again, Star Trek needs to come back to TV. It's always been, Discovery may not be the ideal show for some of us old timers here, but but it's back. Star Trek's back on TV, and that's exciting. And I think it's the fact that it's very successful is very encouraging too, because it means that over time it can blossom into something.
I have my reservations about the show, but I get this unexplained feeling of pride when I see that it's the most streamed show currently.
Yeah, by pretty awesome.
Miles. I forgot what it is, but the second place is something like 25-30 million streams. Star Trek Discovery is 57.
Yeah. God. It's cool. And we can,
and this is only in the United States.
I know, which is the one thing that's awesome about the CBS decision to like only offer it through streaming is they can actually monitor its full success. Like they don't have ratings coming from other places, so this is a pretty big deal.
There are
The
major
numbers that have come
complaints
out
about Netflix not actually releasing their numbers, apparently, and that's annoying people, because usually you put your show out on TV and you know who's watching it, what the demo is, and etc. Netflix isn't too transparent about all that. I like to keep that to themselves because they clearly have the numbers.
Yeah,
but they like to keep that to themselves.
Well, the Anonymous, I know you have time to waste on, not waste, better things to spend your time on. But if there's a hacker that you can spare to get us those numbers, we'd like to have. Any question for you? So I know, we're behind on this discussion, but we're all caught up currently. Who's your favorite character so far in the entire series? Like, who stands out the most? Who are you following, and who are you hoping for and rooting for on the show the most? Who's that?
Dr. Kolber, interesting enough. I don't know.
Wow, very cool.
When you ask me one specific character, I have a lot of trouble kind of finding one because I find them all. I really like Jojo and Tikov. I really like the dynamic that they had. But I have trouble thinking of a character, so I try to think outside the box of, is there another character that I like? And Stamets, yes, but Stamets is hard to kind of grasp where he's at, because in episode 4 he's still cranky. In episode 5 and 6 he's become some sort of, I don't know, hippie.
Magic mushroom.
Yeah, because of the magic mushrooms. So I don't know if he's a character that I can fully appreciate now because I don't know anything about him. So Kolber is kind of one of the most grounded, real Starfleet officers that there is, and so I like him.
Especially the stand that he makes and things like that. You're right. Yeah, there's very cool.
He is honorable, and I like the dynamic that's going on in the more recent episodes with Tilly Burnham and Tyler,
who might
I like that. I like the dynamic that they have, those three characters. Looking back at episode 4, because I rewatched episode 4 before we did this, I realized that one of my problems was this Burnham Saru Lorca situation. I didn't like it. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like the way they were interacting, and I didn't like how the series was.
Like no between the three of them, there's like virtually no movement forward. They're kind of stuck in these like ruts, if you will.
Well, they each have their they have their presets, and they're anchored down into those presets. And then when you finally get Tilly and Burnham, that's a nice relationship that opens up. And then you get this hot guy, Tyler, that comes in, and I think that opens up as well. It's more interesting. I think it's more dynamic now.
If he is somehow altered Klingon Voq into Ash Tyler, which is probably the most likely thing that's going to happen.
It's the most dominant theory. That's for sure.
It is interesting that they chose such an attractive appearance for. And I do like that he's
looking at
whoever Tyler. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, looking at him, he could be a very good bad guy. Series, devious Klingon look.
Yeah, it's totally there. I do like that whoever Lieutenant Ash Tyler actually was, he's from Seattle, where I just moved from. So that was a nice little nod to the city of Seattle. I had jokingly pretended that after the Vengeance or whatever, what was it called in Star Trek Into Darkness? The
USS Vengeance, that's it.
Yeah, the Vengeance crashes into San Francisco, that they moved Starfleet headquarters to Seattle. So
of course,
that was the joke on Starfleet Boy.
I would think so.
I'm done with my questions, and you've really exposed me to some interesting thoughts to think about. It was nice to revisit this episode, which I agree doesn't really go too far. Do you have any closing thoughts or questions or things that you want to say about it?
I don't know. to be honest. As it came out, episode 4 disappointed me, and I was to some certain extent angry. And so we did a discussion with another bunch of people about episode 4, and I don't know. I know that Damien tries to always bring out the best in people and bring out the best things to say, but I wasn't feeling the episode at all. Looking back at it after episode 5 and 6, which are the two best in my opinion up until now, I rationalized the flaws a little bit more. I think what disturbs me still is that the episode doesn't move the plot along that much. The things that were done in the episode, like killing Landry.
We didn't even talk about that. That's right.
We didn't even talk about that. But killing Landry.
I do have a note about. I do have a note about it. I have to give a kudos to the makeup artists and special makeup effects artists on the show, because that like destroyed.
Oh yeah,
Landry was beautiful and horrifying. It was like
at
really
the same time. Yeah. Well, so were the mangled bodies too on the Glen.
Yeah, that was really impressive as well. God. Lots of excellent horror notes in the
yeah, absolutely. Well, all the practical effects are great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, the two big things like Landry dying and those the Klingons, you know, having their story arc, I think could have been done. I don't know, in some other episode, maybe in the background of some other episode, or they didn't justify an entire episode for themselves, and it just kind of made a messy episode.
I agree with you, and you know, coming to think of it, when you bring up Landry, I just didn't connect to her death very much. I didn't connect to her character enough to care about her death entirely.
She wasn't a very good Starfleet officer.
Yeah, she wasn't a Starfleet, but we didn't even get a chance to see deep inside her. And I get it, like that happens in real life too. You know what I mean? Like someone you just met just dies, and we are experiencing this from Burnham's eyes. So yeah, okay, fine. But just, you know, you have control writers, and like I would have liked more Landry, especially because I love Rekha Sharma. I mean, she's a Battlestar, you know, alumni, and she's a fantastic actress. The other thing is I didn't connect to the distress in the episode. The big problem was Corovan II under attack, and like, you know, they show a few quick scenes from Corovan II, but you know, if the show's free to do whatever it wants, like, hey, let's spend 5 minutes on Corovan II, like why not? Or, you know, I don't know, something could have happened just to connect us more, I think, to that whole thing.
And I know TNG is comparatively to today's television slow-paced, which means if there's a colony being attacked, the entire episode is going to be the Enterprise D in orbit of that colony trying to figure it out. And I know that kind of stuff isn't really applicable to today's television and maybe audience, but done right, it gives you more depth, and it helps you understand the situation more.
It could have been.
We just kind of go into Corovan II and then go out, and we could have stayed there more. We could have, I don't know, the battle doesn't need to necessarily rage for a few minutes, and then that's it. I would have liked to see them really in trouble. The shields are dropping, and you know, I don't know.
Or even just, what about you know, the announcement goes over the, you know, the mission gets stated over the general channels, and a character that we don't even meet again, maybe per se, but like has their families on Corovan II. Like that would have been an interesting connection. Just something just to connect us a little more with Corovan II. I think to keep the danger very present. I just felt like they lollygagged to get there, even with the fire that Lorca puts under the acid.
But there's a problem with the way they talk about the time too, because when he gets the first communique, Lorca, I think Admiral Cornwell says something about the nearest ship being 4 hours away.
And yet, Saru says there's like 5 hours. Yeah,
exactly. Discovery needs to do the jump now.
Right.
But then Saru eventually, when Stamets says, "Oh, we can't do the jump now," Saru says, "Well, we got to get there in at least 5 hours." And it's like, well, then they could have just sent the other ship, because that was only 4 hours away.
Yeah, and like, why isn't it already on its way there? Like, they should just, like, it's true. Yeah, there's a lot of problems like that. So
there's a lot of inconsistencies with this episode specifically. So maybe they got them all out of the way. But
well, we give.
It'd be interesting to talk about episode 5. That was my favorite. So
I will love to talk to you about it. Maybe we'll talk off air about schedules and stuff like that. But on the show, we give episodes a rating between 1 through 10. Based on everything that we've based on everything we've talked about, I think I'm gonna go ahead. I was originally feeling like this episode was a 5, but I'm gonna give this episode a 4.5 because there are so many problems with it. That don't feel like, and if they do, I'll come back and raise my rating or watch this again. But I do feel like this is an abandoned episode. I do feel like this is an episode that, like, we got some cool special effects, we got a little bit of character development, we got some really interesting and weird questions that we don't know the answers to, that we are going to be spending a lot of time with other fans thinking about, and that's about all. Nothing really moved forward. There was no momentum. It didn't feel like the show moved forward in this episode.
This was Discovery's Shades of Grey. My God. I've never rated an episode before. I rate movies because I do that on IMDb. I rate harshly.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Nothing has ever gotten over 9 on IMDb. Okay. I'll probably give this maybe a 4.
So 4 and 4.5. Yeah. So we'll average it out at a 4. Well, that was awesome.
I'm gonna be honest. I give it a 4 because it is Star Trek. If it was something else with Star Trek, it might have gotten less.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it's not a good episode of a TV show. That doesn't reflect on the quality of the show in general. It just, this episode in particular wasn't that being said, I have to acknowledge that there were some interesting things. That first scene with the replicator or the synthesizer,
matter synthesizer. Yeah,
that was great. I really liked that.
I thought we were gonna be in some kind of weird, like,
nebula
environment. Yeah, like something like it was.
I was like, cool. This is an Enterprise styled nebula or expanse that we're going through, and I was fooled.
Well done, visual effects team. please slow down a little. Show us more ships.
Yeah. maybe render less ships, but show us the ones that you have. Show us the few that you have.
It would be very cool. Well, Sean, it was really wonderful to, like, virtually meet you.
Yeah.
And to talk to you.
Because this was our first meeting, guys.
I know, it's very cool. Hey, modern age, right? That's how people meet. I look forward to exploring more. Now that I'm getting along in discussions, I'm now able to go back and watch other discussions, because I'm trying not to know what people think too much, so that we but I'm getting closer to, like, where I can now, like, dive in. So now I'm gonna go to your channel and watch all your episodes. And I hope the audience will too. So you can go to Trek on the Tube on YouTube. Do you have any other? You're on Twitter. You're Trek on the Tube as well.
Trek on the Tube on Twitter as well. But
excellent. Are you on Instagram?
No, I don't do any of that. I don't even have a Facebook. I got a Twitter because I like to tweet. But
nice. Well, I'm really happy to have you on Starfleet Boy, and look forward to more to come. Live long and prosper. Wrong hand. Live long and prosper. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.